People think history begins with battles. Wrong. History usually begins with laughter. I remember it clearly as I sat beneath the towering crystal dome of Unity Nexus, the heart of the Galactic Assembly. Hundreds of civilizations filled the vast circular chamber, their banners floating above marble platforms while translators blended thousands of languages into one voice. Today, however, diplomacy had given way to curiosity. Every conversation revolved around a single subject: my marriage to Princess Lyra Kane of the Orion League. To them, I wasn't Ethan Brooks, a human diplomat. I was merely the princess's political accessory. The older empires saw humanity as a young species that had barely earned its seat among the stars. Marrying into one of the galaxy's oldest royal families seemed amusing rather than significant. I heard quiet chuckles as senators speculated how long such an unusual union could possibly matter. Lyra sat beside me in her silver ceremonial robes, every inch the future empress. Beneath the council table, her fingers briefly squeezed mine. It reminded me why I was here. Then the assembly doors burst open. A security officer staggered inside carrying an emergency data crystal. The Orion frontier is under attack. The laughter vanished. History had finally arrived. The officer reached the center of the chamber, breathing heavily as the emergency crystal projected a battlefield above the assembly floor. The hologram showed burning colonies, shattered orbital stations, and civilians fleeing beneath relentless bombardment. Every ship carried human hull designs, yet none displayed the insignia of Earth or any recognized Terran fleet. A wave of uneasy whispers swept through the delegates. Impossible, one senator muttered. Earth has no fleet operating in Orion space. The intelligence director stepped forward and enlarged the tactical display. The attackers use modified human technology, erased identification codes, and encrypted communications. Initial analysis suggested piracy. He paused. That conclusion was incorrect. The image changed again. A black emblem appeared above the fleet, a broken horizon crossed by a crimson star. Several human representatives stiffened. I felt my stomach tighten. I knew that symbol. Black Horizon. A name buried in classified archives and spoken only behind sealed doors. The director continued. Intercepted transmissions confirm the organization has coordinated attacks on 6 Orion frontier worlds simultaneously. Civilian casualties continue to rise. Military targets have been deliberately avoided whenever possible. Confused voices filled the chamber. They sparing warships? They attacking population centers instead. Why? The answer came from another analyst. Because they want witnesses. The room fell silent once more. New reports flooded across the hologram. Refugee convoys, distress beacons, emergency evacuations. Every attack had been carefully timed to maximize fear instead of strategic gain. Then the final intelligence packet arrived. The analyst's voice became noticeably quieter. We have successfully decrypted fragments of Black Horizon's communications. He opened the recording. A calm male voice echoed through the assembly. Let the Orion League blame Earth. Let Earth blame Orion. Fear will do the rest. Once the first fleets fire upon one another, the galaxy will finish our work for us. The recording ended. No one spoke. The realization spread across the chamber like ice. This was never an invasion. It was provocation. Someone wanted to ignite a war between humanity and its closest ally. Every eye slowly turned toward the human delegation. Toward me. For the first time since entering the assembly, I could feel genuine suspicion replacing polite amusement. And somewhere beyond Orion's burning frontier, I knew one man was smiling. Jack Mercer had made his opening move. No one said a word. Hundreds of delegates simply stared at me as though I had personally ordered the attacks. Moments earlier I had been little more than an interesting curiosity. A human who had somehow married the future empress of the Orion League. Now I had become something far more dangerous in their eyes. A possible traitor. The silence lingered until Senator Valek of the Draconis Combine slowly rose from his seat. Ambassador Brooks, he said, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. Those ships are undeniably of human origin. Irrelevant, another delegate interrupted. Weapons built on Earth remain Earth's responsibility. Several representatives nodded in agreement. The Terran Republic must answer. The Orion League deserves compensation. Perhaps humanity has finally revealed its true ambitions. Each accusation landed without emotion. I remained seated. Princess Lyra looked toward me, her expression calm despite the growing hostility surrounding us. She knew me well enough to recognize the difference between hesitation and patience. I was waiting. The speaker finally addressed me directly. Royal Consort Ethan Brooks. His ancient eyes narrowed. Does humanity deny involvement? Every gaze in the assembly fixed upon me. I stood slowly, not dramatically, not hurriedly, simply because remaining seated any longer would have seemed disrespectful. My government has no knowledge of these attacks, I answered evenly. Murmurs swept through the chamber. Someone laughed. Another senator folded his arms. So convenient. You expect us to believe rogue humans assembled an entire battle fleet unnoticed? I met his eyes without raising my voice. I expect you to believe evidence. The senator scoffed. Humanity has existed among us for scarcely a century. Your military is insignificant compared to the great powers gathered here. What authority could you possibly have over criminals capable of threatening the Orion League? I almost smiled. If only he knew. Most people in this room believed I had spent my career negotiating treaties, attending ceremonies, and standing politely beside Lyra at state functions. That was true. For the last 7 years, no one here had bothered to ask what I had done before diplomacy. No one had opened the files locked beneath Earth's highest security clearance. To them, I was merely the princess's husband, exactly as I preferred, because the most dangerous advantage a person can possess is being completely underestimated. The chamber remained silent long enough for the tension to become almost physical. Hundreds of representatives watched me, waiting for excuses, apologies, or desperate diplomacy. They expected a young species to beg for mercy before the ancient powers of the galaxy. Instead, I took one slow breath. This is not Earth's war. My voice carried across the assembly without effort. Those ships do not represent humanity. Several senators exchanged skeptical glances. They are human, one of them replied. Yes, I answered. By birth, not by conviction. The holographic image of the burning colonies still floated above us. I looked at it for a moment before continuing. Black Horizon abandoned everything humanity stands for long ago. They chose terror over civilization, hatred over responsibility, and chaos over peace. They are no more representatives of Earth than pirates represent your empires. A murmur spread through the chamber. I ignored it. They understand human tactics. They understand our technology. They understand our weaknesses. I paused. But they also understand one thing they should never have forgotten. Every eye remained fixed on me. We know them better than anyone else. The speaker leaned forward. And what exactly are you proposing, Ambassador Brooks? I met his gaze without hesitation. Do not declare war on Earth. The words echoed through the immense chamber. Allow humanity to deal with its own. Confusion replaced anger on many faces. You ask us to trust the very species responsible for this attack? A delegate demanded. I ask you, I replied calmly, to avoid making the mistake Black Horizon is counting on. The tactical display shifted as new intelligence arrived. Another Orion colony had fallen. Gasps echoed through the assembly. They want retaliation, I continued. They want your fleets moving toward Earth before the truth can be established. The first shot between our governments will begin a war that neither side actually wants. Princess Lyra watched me without speaking. She understood something the others did not. I wasn't asking. I was warning them. If you mobilize against Earth, I said quietly, Black Horizon wins before the real battle even begins. The chamber fell completely silent. For the first time since the emergency began, no one laughed. No one interrupted. They were finally listening. The silence lasted only a heartbeat. Then the chamber exploded into arguments. "You expect us to gamble the fate of the Orion League on your confidence?" a senator shouted. Another delegate rose immediately. "Earth has already failed to control its own people." A third struck the crystal railing before him. "The Terran Republic must be sanctioned until every vessel carrying human weapons is accounted for." Voices overlapped until the translators could barely keep pace. Accusations, demands, and threats echoed beneath the enormous dome while the hologram of the burning frontier continued to rotate above us. I remained where I stood. There was no point trying to speak over panic. Princess Lyra slowly rose from her throne. Instantly the chamber quieted. "As heir to the Orion League," she said with measured authority, "I will hear every proposal. But I will not condemn an entire civilization without proof." Some delegates bowed their heads respectfully. Others clearly disagreed. Senator Valek folded his arms. "Your Highness, with respect, your judgment may be compromised." "Because I married a human? Because you love one?" The words hung heavily in the air. Lyra did not react. "I married Ethan Brooks because I judged his character, not his species." Valek turned toward me. "And yet this quiet diplomat claims he alone understands an enemy fleet." He laughed softly. "How can one man hope to stop thousands?" Several senators joined him. "A diplomat is not a commander. A royal consort is not a soldier. Earth asks us to trust a single human." Their laughter spread across the chamber once more. I listened without expression. None of them knew that I had once commanded operations across 3 sectors. None of them knew that Black Horizon had nearly ceased to exist because of my unit. Most importantly, none of them knew the name Jack Mercer. The speaker finally struck his staff against the crystal floor. "Enough." His voice silenced the assembly. "Until additional intelligence arrives, no declaration of war will be issued." Relief flickered across a handful of faces. Anger crossed many more. The vote had merely been delayed. Outside the chamber, millions of lives depended upon what happened next. Inside, the oldest civilizations in the galaxy still believed the fate of the Orion League rested in the hands of an insignificant human diplomat. Exactly as Black Horizon had planned. While the Galactic Assembly continued arguing beneath the crystal dome of Unity Nexus, I requested a secure communication channel that bypassed every civilian network in known space. The authorization required 3 biometric confirmations and an encryption key that officially no longer existed. The screen remained black for several seconds. Then a single sentence appeared. "Fort Liberty online." The image resolved into an underground command center buried deep beneath the mountains of Earth. Massive holographic displays tracked every fleet movement across Orion space while officers hurried between tactical stations with disciplined urgency. No one looked surprised to see me. General Marcus Hale saluted. "Commander." The title echoed across the operations room. Not ambassador, not consort, commander. Around him stood intelligence analysts, engineers, cyberwarfare specialists, and veterans whose uniforms carried no public insignia. Every face on the screen belonged to someone whose existence had been erased from official military records years earlier. General Hale spoke first. "They confirmed Black Horizon's identity. Jack Mercer is directing the operation personally." A quiet murmur spread through the room. Even among these professionals, that name carried weight. I folded my hands. "Casualties? Heavy on the frontier. Civilian infrastructure only. Mercer is avoiding decisive military engagements." I nodded. "He's following the pattern." An analyst enlarged the tactical map. "He's provoking retaliation, not conquest." "Exactly." Another officer looked toward me. "The Assembly? They re-divided. How long before someone declares war on Earth?" I answered without hesitation. "Less than 48 hours unless we stop this." The room became silent. Finally, an older man stepped forward from the rear of the command center. His gray hair contrasted sharply with the black uniform he wore. Colonel Sarah Donovan, the last surviving field commander of Ghost Raven. She met my eyes. I never thought I'd hear Mercer's name again. Neither did I. She placed a classified dossier onto the table. Across its cover were 2 words every person in the room recognized. Ghost Raven. A mission buried for 7 years. A war nobody outside Fort Liberty even knew had happened. And the operation that should have ended Black Horizon forever. Colonel Donovan opened the dossier with deliberate care, as though disturbing old paper might awaken old ghosts. The room fell silent. Even the analysts at their consoles stopped typing. Everyone inside Fort Liberty understood that some files were never opened unless there was no other choice. The first page displayed a faded insignia, a black raven carrying a broken sword. Task Force Ghost Raven. Status: decommissioned. Officially, the unit had never existed. Unofficially, it had been humanity's answer to enemies too dangerous for conventional forces. Donovan looked at me. 7 years ago, Black Horizon wasn't TA fleet. It was a covert network hidden across 12 star systems. Smugglers, extremists, rogue scientists, former military officers. They believed lasting peace could only be created through endless war. She changed the display. Faces appeared one after another. Most were marked deceased. Others read captured. One remained highlighted in crimson. Jack Mercer. Former commander. Status: active. Priority: absolute. An intelligence officer enlarged Mercer's service record. He graduated first in every strategic program Earth ever developed. Psychological operations, fleet command, asymmetric warfare, counterinsurgency. He wrote half the tactical doctrines we still teach today. Another officer added quietly, then he disappeared. I finished the sentence. He decided humanity had become weak. No one argued. Mercer believed diplomacy delayed the inevitable. In his mind, peace was nothing more than an intermission between wars. If civilizations refused to fight, he would simply give them a reason. Donovan turned another page. This was Ghost Raven's final operation. The hologram shifted to a burning asteroid fortress surrounded by wreckage. We destroyed 92% of Black Horizon in a single night. Images flashed across the room. Boarding actions, orbital strikes, collapsing stations, rescued prisoners. We believed Mercer died in the assault. General Hale folded his arms. We never recovered his body. I stared at the tactical map hovering above the table. I should have known. Donovan met my eyes. He spent years studying you. So did I. The room became perfectly still. Because everyone present understood the truth. Jack Mercer wasn't just my enemy. He had once been my mentor. No one spoke for several seconds after Donovan's final words. The silence inside Fort Liberty carried more weight than any argument in the Galactic Assembly. Every officer understood what facing Jack Mercer truly meant. He wasn't merely a brilliant strategist. He had trained most of the commanders now responsible for Earth's hidden defenses. He knew our procedures, our habits, and our strengths. Fortunately, I knew his. General Hale enlarged the tactical display until the Orion frontier filled the room. Mercer's fleet expects an immediate response, he said. I nodded. Then we'll disappoint him. Several younger officers exchanged confused looks. No counterattack? One asked. Not yet. I pointed toward Nova Astra, the imperial capital of the Orion League. Mercer believes fear creates predictable decisions. He expects Orion to demand revenge and Earth to mobilize openly. When that happens, he'll strike both sides at once. An intelligence analyst frowned. So we do nothing? I shook my head. We do everything. The hologram changed as hidden icons appeared beyond the frontier. Silent formations. No identification codes. No active transmissions. Earth's classified battle groups. Our fleets move now, I continued, but under total emission control. No communications beyond laser relay. No jump signatures inside monitored sectors. Black Horizon must believe Earth is hesitating. General Hale smiled faintly. The old Ghost Raven approach. Exactly. Colonel Donovan folded her arms. And Nova Astra? I am going there. Several heads turned. The palace is Mercer's real objective, I explained. He'll attack the capital because symbols matter more than territory. If Princess Lyra falls, the Orion League will declare total war before anyone asks questions. An operations officer looked uneasy. That leaves you directly in his path. I know. General Hale activated the deployment order. Across the tactical map, hidden fleets silently altered course, disappearing into deep space beyond enemy surveillance. Thousands of ships moved without broadcasting a single signal. No speeches, no dramatic mobilization, only preparation. Mercer believed he was leading humanity toward chaos. He never realized we had already chosen the battlefield. Now all we had to do was wait for him to step into the trap. Our shuttle entered the atmosphere of Nova Astra without ceremony. No escort fighters, no military parade, no public announcement. From orbit the capital looked untouched, its silver towers reflecting the morning light as if the frontier were not already burning. That illusion was exactly what Mercer wanted. A peaceful world was easier to break than one expecting war. Princess Lyra stood beside me as we crossed the palace landing platform. She studied my face for several moments before speaking. You've been here before. Once, and it wasn't diplomatic. No, she accepted the answer without another question. That was one of the reasons I trusted her. Inside, the Imperial Guard greeted us with perfect discipline. Their commander began explaining defensive formations, evacuation routes, and ceremonial security procedures. I listened politely until he finished. Your plans assume the enemy attacks from outside. He frowned. Is there another possibility? There always is. I requested every maintenance schematic, cargo manifest, personnel roster, and surveillance record covering the last 6 months. The officers exchanged uncertain glances, but Lyra approved the request immediately. Within an hour, Fort Liberty analysts were quietly examining every document through encrypted channels. The first anomaly appeared 17 minutes later. A maintenance contractor assigned to the Eastern Power Grid had no verified birthplace. The second arrived 4 minutes after that. 3 supply shipments listed identical engine serial numbers despite coming from different systems. Then Donovan transmitted a single message. They already inside. I closed the report. Mercer had never relied on overwhelming force alone. He preferred invisible pressure, hidden agents, and carefully placed doubts that collapsed governments from within before the first shot was fired. The palace wasn't the battlefield. It was the prize. I looked through the enormous window overlooking the city. Thousands of civilians walked peacefully through gardens, markets, and transport stations, completely unaware that a war had already reached their home. Mercer believed he had infiltrated the heart of Orion. He was right. What he didn't know was that Ghost Raven had just entered with him. Ghost Raven never chased enemies. We let them reveal themselves. By sunset every suspicious shipment had been tracked, every compromised maintenance tunnel mapped, and every unidentified communication relay quietly mirrored by Fort Liberty. Mercer believed his operatives remained invisible. In reality, we were watching every step they took without disturbing a single one. That was the hardest lesson he had ever taught me. Never interrupt an enemy making a mistake. Colonel Donovan's voice reached me through the encrypted earpiece. 8 confirmed cells, possibly more. Leave them. A brief silence followed. They replanting charges beneath the Eastern Senate wing. I know. The Imperial Guard is requesting permission to arrest them. Denied. Mercer expected panic, explosions, emergency deployments, confusion. Instead, the palace continued exactly as before. Diplomats attended receptions. Servants crossed endless corridors. Musicians performed beneath crystal ceilings. Only a handful of humans knew that every corridor concealed Ghost Raven operators wearing maintenance uniforms instead of armor. Hidden cameras showed Black Horizon agents exchanging coded phrases, carrying equipment through forgotten service passages, convinced nobody had noticed them. They never once looked behind them. Near midnight another transmission arrived. General Hale projected a fleet movement across my display. Black Horizon had entered the outer system. Right on schedule. Mercer wasn't coming to conquer Nova Astra. He was coming to execute a spectacle. Assassinate the royal family. Destroy the assembly. Leave evidence pointing toward Earth. The galaxy would finish the rest. Princess Lyra entered the operations room quietly. You knew. I hoped I was wrong. She studied the tactical display before looking back at me. And now, I activated the final stage of the operation. Every hidden Ghost Raven team acknowledged with a single encrypted signal. No speeches, no countdown, no celebration, only readiness. Mercer believed he had surrounded the palace with hunters. He never imagined the palace itself had become the trap. For the first time since this crisis began, I allowed myself a single thought. Tomorrow, my former commander would discover that the student he had trained no longer fought by his rules. Tomorrow, Jack Mercer would walk into a battlefield I had built for him. The attack began at 3:17 local time. No warning, no declaration. The palace lights failed as synchronized explosions echoed beneath the eastern wing. Black Horizon agents emerged from maintenance corridors exactly where Mercer had predicted the Imperial Guard would be weakest. Except the Guard wasn't waiting. Ghost Raven was. The first team crossed the intersection without firing a shot. Hidden barriers sealed every escape route while electronic warfare units flooded enemy communications with false orders. Mercer had taught us years ago that confusion was stronger than fear. We had perfected the lesson. Across the palace, firefights lasted seconds rather than minutes. Every hostile position had already been mapped. Every route had already been anticipated. Black Horizon operators discovered that every door they opened led toward another Ghost Raven unit. They hadn't infiltrated the palace. They had entered a maze. General Hale's voice remained calm inside my earpiece. Outer fleet commencing assault. The tactical display confirmed it. Hundreds of Black Horizon vessels dropped from hyperspace above Nova Astra, broadcasting a fabricated emergency transmission accusing Earth of launching the attack. Civilian networks received the signal before anyone could deny it. Mercer's final move. Too late. Fort Liberty released the unedited recordings gathered over the previous 48 hours. Every forged order, every infiltrator, every communication linking Black Horizon to the operation. Across the galaxy, the lie collapsed before it could spread. A shadow crossed the palace courtyard. A single shuttle descended without escort. No transponder, no fleet markings. I recognized it immediately. Jack Mercer had come himself. The hatch opened slowly. He stepped onto the stone landing platform wearing the same black field uniform I remembered from Ghost Raven. 7 years had added gray to his hair, but not hesitation to his movements. He looked directly at me. I wondered how long it would take. I expected you sooner. Around us, neither side raised a weapon. Mercer smiled faintly. You always were patient. You taught me that. His expression hardened. No, Ethan. He took one deliberate step forward. I taught you how to win. I met his eyes without moving. And tonight, I'll show you why you were wrong. Mercer stopped 10 meters away. Neither of us reached for a weapon. The battle surrounding the palace continued, but it already sounded distant. Ghost Raven had isolated every remaining Black Horizon unit, while Earth's hidden fleets intercepted Mercer's warships beyond orbit. Reports flowed across my display. One after another, hostile formations disappeared from the tactical map. He glanced toward the burning sky. So you finally showed them what humanity really built. They forced our hand. They feared you before today. They'll fear war even more tomorrow. A faint smile crossed his face. Still thinking like a protector. And you, still confusing destruction with strength. Without another word, Mercer drew a compact pistol. Mine was already aimed at him. Neither of us fired. He knew my reaction time. I knew his. For several endless seconds nothing moved except drifting ash carried across the courtyard. Then he laughed. I wondered if you hesitate. I didn't. His finger tightened. Mine moved first. A single shot echoed through the palace grounds. Mercer staggered backward before falling onto one knee. The pistol slipped from his hand and struck the stone beside him. He looked down at the wound, then back at me. I trained you well. You did. He nodded slowly, almost with pride. I suppose. This was always how it ended. I lowered my weapon. Medical teams rushed forward, but Mercer raised one hand, refusing their help. His breathing became shallow. I wanted humanity to rule through fear. I answered quietly, humanity survives because it refuses to. For the first time since I had known him, Jack Mercer had no reply. His eyes closed. The founder of Black Horizon died beneath the palace he had come to destroy. Minutes later, General Hale confirmed the final report. Enemy fleets had surrendered. Remaining infiltrators were in custody. Nova Astra still stood. The Orion League had been saved. Not by speeches, not by miracles, only by preparation, discipline, and people willing to remain invisible until the moment history demanded they step into the light. The first sunrise after the battle arrived without celebration. Smoke still drifted above sections of Nova Astra, yet the city remained alive. Emergency crews repaired damaged transit lines while civilians quietly returned to streets they had believed they would never see again. Across the Orion League, relief replaced panic, though uncertainty lingered in every official report. Inside the assembly chamber, the same delegates who had questioned humanity now sat in complete silence. No accusations remained, only facts. Every investigation confirmed the truth. Black Horizon had orchestrated the attacks alone. Earth had concealed its intervention not to claim glory, but to prevent a war that would have consumed the galaxy. Every hidden fleet, every Ghost Raven operation, every decision had been directed toward preserving lives rather than winning political influence. I stood before the assembly once more. No applause greeted me. None was needed. The speaker lowered his staff. Ambassador Brooks. Humanity has earned the gratitude of every civilization represented here. I shook my head. We didn't act for gratitude. Then why? I looked around the chamber. At the senators who had feared us. At the worlds that had nearly destroyed each other through deception. Then I answered with the only truth that mattered. Because if civilization survives only when convenient, it doesn't deserve to survive. No one challenged the words. Princess Lyra stepped beside me. For the first time since this crisis began, the assembly looked at humanity differently. Not with admiration, not even with trust, with understanding. They had mistaken restraint for weakness, preparation for aggression, silence for insignificance. Now they knew better. Ghost Raven would return to history as another classified file. Fort Liberty would disappear behind layers of secrecy once more. Official records would remember diplomats, treaties, and votes. Very few would ever learn how close the galaxy had come to destroying itself. Fewer still would know that its survival had depended on people whose greatest victory was remaining almost completely unknown. 5 years passed before the Black Horizon crisis became a mandatory subject in every major military academy across known space. Cadets memorized timelines, studied political failures, and analyzed the fragile chain of events that had nearly driven the Orion League and Earth into a war neither side truly wanted. Official history praised diplomacy. It praised restraint. It praised unity. But thousands of classified pages remained sealed. No public archive mentioned Ghost Raven. No monument carried the names of the operators who died beneath the palace of Nova Astra. Fort Liberty officially did not exist. Perhaps that was for the best. Princess Lyra continued serving the Orion League with the same quiet determination that had carried her through its darkest hours. I remained beside her, still wearing the title of diplomat, still attending negotiations, still smiling for cameras that never knew where I had truly been. Sometimes visiting delegations would ask whether the stories about humanity were exaggerated, whether our hidden fleets were real, whether Ghost Raven had ever existed. I always gave the same answer. You have peace. For most of them, that was enough. The truth was simpler than any legend. Humanity had never wanted to become the galaxy's greatest military power. It had simply prepared for the day someone else forced it to be. History would remember the treaties signed after the war. It would remember the rebuilding of Nova Astra. It would remember that civilization endured. Very few would remember who had protected it when everything began to fall apart. And that was acceptable, because peace was never measured by the names history preserved. It was measured by the countless lives that would never know how close they had come to losing everything. Humanity had saved the galaxy. Then it quietly returned to work, exactly as it always intended.